Seen it.
And you don't think that this is just happenstance. You think Russia is actively involved in trying to influence this election.
So here's the real problem. Right? We're talking about politics here. It's the DNC. But this is actually an unprecedented national security crisis for the Americans. Obama has to deal with it. He's going to go back to the White House now, and he has to figure out how the Americans respond to America's principal cyber protagonist undermining politically the U.S. election. And if you think that the DNC emails coming out right before the Democratic National Convention happen to be the story, like, it's going to beyond this over the next few months, and Putin makes no bones about the fact that he's the only major leader in the world. I mean, leave aside people like, Le Pen in the National Front in France, maybe Kim Jong-un. There's no major leader in the world out there that wants Trump like Putin does, and he has the capability of actually influencing.
You talk about Le Pen. Putin's also gotten involved with the National Front, funding the National Front.
That's right.
Funding other organizations across Europe whose intention is to break up the European Union.
And this week, the American White House has been in touch with a number of European governments trying to get them to develop a combined strategy on this. And I've spoken with several of the ambassadors in Washington, and their response so far is, hey, we may know it's Russia. We don't know it's Putin. We're trying to get rid of sanctions ourselves on Russia, by the way. We've got economic benefits. We don't want to work with you guys. So the Americans are going to have to do the lifting. It's not easy to come up with what your strategy is to punish the Russians. By the way, the same Russians Obama is now trying to work with on Syria. Like, that's a failed policy for him. He didn't have to address it last night when he was supporting Hillary Clinton. He better address it today. This is a serious issue.
Ian, if Putin is trying to influence this election, what is it about Donald Trump that he feels will be helpful to him? Does it feel like he can manipulate him? Is it that he's a kindred spirit? Why would Putin want Donald Trump to be president?
Why would Putin want Brexit? He's looking for a divide and conquer strategy of America and its closest allies. And if you talk to America's allies around the world, they're all mortified by the notion of a President Trump. Beyond that, you have, all of the issues of to what extent Trump is actually cozy with the Russians because of the oligarchs buying his apartments, Paul Manafort, who runs the Trump campaign, who's actually been on the payroll for Yanukovych, who was president of Ukraine, the pro-Kremlin guy. His responses on that haven't been easy. But even leaving aside any economic connections for the Trump, it's very clear for Putin that Trump, as president, is actually quite useful for Russia. Look, America's 50-50 on Trump versus Clinton, but if you go around the world, there's no one out there, there's no population out there that's saying they want Trump, with the exception of the Russians.
He wants chaos.
Absolutely. He wants a weaker America.
Destabilization.
And two policy areas, right? The Crimea, right?
Yeah.
And on the supplying arms to rebels in the Ukraine, he has basically embraced Putin's policy on both of those things.
This is such an intriguing point.
It's a real thing.
He actually forced them to take arming Ukrainian rebels, which, McCain and others have been very strong of, out of the Republican platform. And he said yesterday that on recognizing Crimea, which the Russians annexed unilaterally, he said, look at that closely.
Yeah, they'll think about it.